missing two people today. We haven't got a guest with us, but we're missing two people. We're missing Tapiwa and Andrew. So shout out to them wherever they are. I hope you're good, Andrew, fam. Tapiwa as well, fam. I hope you're calm, bro.
Why'd you say Andrew first?
Alphabetical order, my guy. Anyway, so yeah, today we're actually going to be talking about black communities, fam, and black spaces. Because obviously coming from Luton, there's areas that we see, even just across England, there's areas that you see that are heavily dominated by certain racial groups. And to my knowledge, I can't really name one that's for black groups right now. And even looking into America, there are places like Atlanta, which are heavily populated by black communities. They're thriving as well. Shout out to Atlanta. I don't really know the numbers on the population, but it's definitely heavily dominated. But obviously in the UK, that sort of place doesn't exist. So, one thing I want to ask you, man, is why? Why do you think that place doesn't exist? And I've obviously had conversations with people in the past. Obviously, discussing Berry Park and Luton, which is heavily Asian dominated, and they must have made the comment that a black community like Berry Park wouldn't like it couldn't thrive, like it couldn't even survive, fam. Obviously, to people who don't know what Berry Park is, they have their own barbers there. Yeah. They have fresh meat there. They have chicken chip shops there.
Everything they need.
You see, Chinese stores. Yeah, their clothing is all there. Even they have mattress shops and stuff. You see what I mean? They have mattress shops. Their churches are all in there. Basically, as an Asian, obviously I'm not Asian, but the way I see it, as an Asian, you don't really have much need to leave Berry Park. You see what I mean? There's not really many things you need to leave Berry Park for. So one thing I do want to ask you, man, is why do you think that sort of space doesn't exist right now?
For black people?
Yeah.
I think there is two answers to that question. There's a surface level answer and there's like a deeper answer. On the surface, what I think a lot of people will say is black people aren't good at working together. I'm not saying these are the answers, I'm saying this is what people might say. Black people aren't good at working together, and I'm sure there's some truth to that. What else? But if we go deeper into why that may be, again, which is quite frequent with these answers, we've got to go back to slavery and colonialism, because, you know, black people were in Africa, they had their own communities, they were brought here, and they were taught to not work together, to compete in big slave houses.
It's actually true, because
darker people, lighter skinned people were taught to resent each other. Yeah, I mean, they were taught to work for the master's approval and things like that. Do you know what I mean? So there are answers to these things, and people outside the black community are quick to say, "Oh, black people are just made to be like this," but there are reasons that trickle down to now.
No, it's true, because even when you look into the light skin v dark skin thing during slavery, bro, they were literally not even like taught, but they were literally pushed to hate each other. You see what I mean? The light skinned people were obviously taught that they are better, like they are better than the dark skinned people. And obviously the dark skinned people sort of hated the privilege that they received, fam. But then, Aaron, I was looking through my story, I was looking through my camera roll, and I had a screenshot from your story, fam. It was a picture, there was like a white man, there was two white men. One was obviously in a suit, so obviously he represented the businessman, and obviously so it's like, let's say there's three men at a table, there's a black man here on the right side, the white man sitting in the middle of the table, and there's
I know this.
And there's a worker, like a construction worker working on this side, like on the opposite side to the black person. Obviously, they're face to face. So the white businessman, he basically has bare cookies on his desk, like right in front of him, fam. And then in front of the white man, the white construction worker, so obviously there to represent the lower class of white people, he has one cookie. And obviously the black man he doesn't even have a plate. You see what I mean? There's no cookies on that plate. And there's a thing where this white man is now controlling the narrative, telling this other, as in the rich white man is telling the construction worker, this black man over here, he wants your cookie. Like, he's willing to fight you for it, fam. You see what I mean? That's sort of like what I see the light skin to dark skin divide to be, fam. It's like they were both hating on each other, or they were both looking at the wrong enemy, because the enemy here is the guy who's controlling this. You see what I mean?
And the thing is, he's speaking for the black man as if he even wants a cookie, as
Bro,
if he's even hungry.
You see what I mean? He's
He's speaking for him and trying to paint him out to be someone that he's really not.
You see what I mean?
And not to go off on a tangent, but I think this comes from what I read in the Akala book. You can't speak about racism without speaking about class issues as well, because they come hand in hand. Almost like racism is almost born from like greed and like the want to have the most. Do you know what I mean?
Which is why I tie capitalism very heavily with racism.
Yeah,
but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, it's not today. It's not today.
Have you man heard about the Willie Lynch law?
Nah.
It's there's controversy about it. People say it's fake. People say it's real. All sorts of things.
Is that the how to control a slave? Yeah.
Bang.
And
Oh, actually, I think I have.
Yeah.
Is it quite a short book?
Yeah, it was just a letter to slave owners. I think 1700s. Yeah. He said you have to divide people using like divide and conquer tactics for the slaves, so that they will be oppressed for 300 more years. And he said through age, color, intelligence, size, sex, status, attitude, skin color, male v female, dark v light, old v young.
And you know what's mad? I see these things today in the black community. I see, and I contribute. I see young black people having resentment to the older generation for being a bit stubborn and vice versa. I see black men and black women coming at odds for various different reasons. I see all of that now.
Even just look on Twitter, all of that is there.
But do you know what I mean? And I feel like the fact that we dominate the culture so much is why you now see it trickling down into other communities, and why people are starting to say, "Oh, it's just like a normal thing."
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Nah, I hear that. You know, that's actually I actually hear that, fam.
Because at the end of the day, the thing we need to remember, and the thing that the racists don't want you to know, is that we're all human. So to act like all black people will for some reason not be able to work in a community purely because they're black is ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's got to be reasons as to why a whole cultural set of people, I don't want to say struggle, but like certain things come harder to them than for up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It can't just be because I'm black. It's ridiculous.
Also, to drag back to when you said the surface reasons, fam, and obviously one of them you said was people will think that it couldn't work because obviously crime in that area, like obviously with people's opinions on the nature of black people, fam. And I was just gonna link that back to the whole black crime narrative, fam. People push that narrative sort of to say that black people can't work together. You see what I mean? They couldn't live in a community together, fam. Because that's actually what the person mentioned when when I was speaking to them about why there couldn't be a Blackberry Park, fam. And one thing that they even mentioned, is you see how many buses go through Berry Park, fam. Yeah. I think nearly every Luton bus goes through Berry Park. I think about half of them go through Berry Park. Yeah.
In one way or another.
Yeah. Nearly half of them go through Berry Park, and there's a thing where the person even said, "Well, in this black community, nearly none of them would be anymore, fam. They wouldn't be able to get through safely." And I was like, "Wow,
what? That's ridiculous." That's ridiculous.
I was like, "Wow."
Wait, so was this a black person?
It was a black person. I mean, it was a joke, but at the same time,
all good jokes contain true shit, fam.
You see what I mean? But okay, one thing I do want to bring it back to today is the history of black communities, because black communities have been a thing. You see what I mean? Obviously, one part of history that's lost here is when slavery was abolished. It's sort of like, obviously we're in Black History Month right now. It's sort of a thing where you get taught about slavery, and then you get taught about segregation and the freedom fighters, obviously with MLK and Malcolm X. You get taught those, but there's quite a bit of history that's missed. And obviously, I obviously want to speak about the Black Wall Street, which was in Tulsa during like the 1920s. So what basically happens, obviously after slavery, and black people received their freedom, it's now a thing where black communities came to be. You see what I mean? So obviously how this thing started is obviously over time they acquired wealth, and it just takes one black person to go and buy land somewhere and invite everyone to come and build. And it reached a point where this Black Wall Street was created, and after a couple of years, it now had architects, it now had pharmacists, it now had engineers, it now had doctors, it now had lawyers, barbers. Everything you needed in a community was there. You see what I mean?
And it was so prosperous that it got to a point where even white people were coming.
You see what I mean?
To the black community.
You see what I mean?
Things like loans.
Yeah,
their own banks,
the black banks. Yeah, they came to the black banks for loans and stuff like that. You see what I mean? I even read the statistic here. $1 in that community would circulate from 36 to 100 times before leaving that community. That's incredible. Wow. You see what I mean? That's incredible. And this is also said that money would remain. That same dollar could remain in that community for a whole year. There's no community. I don't think there's no other in history that could replicate that. But I know right now that there's none in history that could replicate that sort of figure, fam. That even $1 lasting 30 to 45 days in one community now is impressive. That's days.
For those who don't know what that means, it's for $1 to last somewhere. It means money is being spent in that area and being recycled. Yeah.
So the money is being spent over and over again inside that area. So obviously the 36 to 100 times. But yeah, so one quote that one person even said, is when they were left alone in the area, they thrived. You see what I mean? So
left alone.
When they were left alone in that area, they thrived. One thing I read about Tulsa is how high the salaries were. Like, they earned unprecedented salaries. I heard that a maid could earn $25 a week, and then I translated that to today's money with inflation. It was around $350 a week, and obviously that's not amazing. But you need to consider how amazing that is at the time. You see what I mean? And obviously with black people having nothing before that, to now people at the lowest earning a good wage. You see what I mean? Like, it's actually amazing, man. I also read that there was a modern day taxi service in there. That's amazing, man. And obviously, this is 1920s. Cars are not everywhere the same way they are today.
Back then, having a car is a luxury.
Back then, having a car is unheard of. You see what I mean? It's straight unheard of, yeah, man. But yeah, so then, even, because you mentioned the whole white people borrowing from banks. Their banks were even lasting through the Great Depression. You see what I mean? Like, this was a thriving community, man.
And another thing on that, this was at a time when the KKK was almost at its peak. Do you know what I mean? So they weren't just doing this like just to be doing. They were doing it against adversity.
Yeah.
So,
No, 100%, man. Like the KKK, especially in Oklahoma, because Tulsa's in Oklahoma. The KKK was big, man, and that's incredible. And obviously, what ended up happening with Tulsa is there was a big race war. There was basically a race war. That's the way that I would describe it. And it all started because, from what I read, it was a black boy must have got into an elevator with a white woman. And then the white woman started screaming, like bare screaming. And then they both ended up running out of there. So it's a thing where the guy got arrested the next day.
Taken to court.
Yeah, he got arrested and taken to court.
And she wasn't pressing charges, by the way.
Bro, the woman never even pressed charges, but the boy was taken to court and he was being charged with assault. And obviously, the congregation of white people and black people outside of the courtroom obviously started fighting. Well, they say that the black people were fighting back, but who knows if that's really the case here.
And then they were pushing it through the media that basically like a call for action. Basically.
Yeah, you see what I mean? Because that newspaper article in which they classed it as assault was put out into all the white areas surrounding. So obviously, with white people seeing how prosperous this area was, all they needed was an excuse to bust through there. You see what I mean? So, because I don't even think the elevator was in the Black Wall Street. I think this was in a different area. And then the white people decided to march down to Tulsa just to destroy it. You see what I mean?
Yeah, so it was a target.
Yeah, it was a targeted attack, man.
Can I just say on that, because when I heard the elevator part, I was thinking, ignorantly, she screamed, so something must have happened. But then I thought about this time at uni when I got into an elevator, and there was this Asian girl. I got in and she gasped, and the whole elevator ride she was just staring at me. I stood there, I was smiling at her like I hadn't done anything. So do you know what I mean? That when, say, this young white lady, she's been taught that black people are dangerous, violent, you know, ruled by their sexual desires. Do you know what I mean? Things like that, they're gonna sink in. So the screaming doesn't mean anything happened. She's just like, things like that could have been ingrained.
See, look, this is in a time where segregation is real.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is clearly a building where black people are allowed to be in. So she's definitely seen black people before. You see what I mean? So why this is a new occurrence, I don't get it. You see what I mean? Like why she would be startled by being in an elevator with a black person, I don't see it, to be honest. But obviously, whether something did happen or not,
I'm not saying
you see what I mean? Whether something did happen or not, it's now a thing where the white people took it upon themselves to march down to Tulsa. And
even though there's no evidence the boy even from Tulsa or has
Tulsa. Bang, I didn't even think about that bit. You see what I mean?
How can we hurt black people?
I didn't even think about that bit. That's so crazy, yeah, because he didn't, it wasn't bait knowledge that he lived in Tulsa or worked in Tulsa or anything. So yeah, they marched all the way down to Tulsa with their guns. And it was a massacre.
Yeah.
I can't lie.
That's the only word you can use.
It was genuinely a massacre.
It wasn't a fight. It wasn't an altercation.
Yeah. In the newspapers, they named it a riot to make it seem like it was a both sides thing.
They even said that at first some newspapers were saying it was only white people that died.
Bro, it's crazy, man.
They said 2 people died, and they said 100 white people had died. Stuff like that.
Crazy, man.
They found vans that were just carrying away the bodies of black victims, and up till today they don't know where a lot of these bodies went.
And even before that, there was something else. I think 1918 or 1919, because the Tulsa thing happened in 1921.
Yeah.
So I think 1918 or 1919, they had this thing where I think it was to do with just. Not even particularly KKK, but a lot of white people who were just racist were going around just killing people.
Yeah.
Just killing black people.
Yeah, there was a name for it. I'm not sure.
I can't remember the name.
Red Summer, fam. It was Red Summer.
Yeah, just going around killing black people just because why not?
And do you know what's crazy? Like, I'm just sitting here thinking about it. Like, black people have been taken from Africa, put through slavery. They've then given you freedom in the country they brought you to, and then they've said, we hate you so much, we're going to start killing you, and creating whole organisations devoted to your downfall. It's like, think about it.
It's actually mental illness.
Like, it's not like we came here, tried to do a thing, flopped, and then they said, we hate you. We got brought here.
It's so mad.
Put through slavery. Said, all right, we're done with slavery, but we're still gonna make your life a living hell.
Why they hated us? I can't even.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Because we weren't even thriving them type.
It's so mad.
Mad.
It genuinely doesn't make sense why they hate us so much.
The powers that be must have done a brilliant job at convincing the lower classes that black people were the devil.
I mean, they still do though. Yeah. Propaganda. all you really need is to control the media.
Because
it's actually the media, bang. Because the media was the whole reason that event happened, man.
I have these little pockets of time where I'll start thinking we're going forward, racism's dying out, and I'll find a random Twitter, and then I'll find that this Twitter's got thousands of followers, and they're just spouting racism, talking about how much they hate black people, and they're getting thousands of retweets, and I'm like, there's a whole. Like, just as they wouldn't see my Twitter, I wouldn't see that there's 2 different worlds. Do you know what I mean?
It's true, man.
Yeah, that's the powerful thing actually about just social media in general and media as a whole, is that I watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Highly recommend it.
I ain't seen it yet.
Bro, you don't want to touch your phone after you watch that.
What it made me realise was that we don't see, with all the algorithms and things, the reason there's so much division is because things that you see that come up on your recommended, you click that, then your recommended is going to be something else, and then what other people are seeing and what other people are clicking, all this information that you're coming across and all the opinions you're it's not even you forming, it's more them forming it for you. But everything that's going on in your mind, they're not seeing any of that. So it's just because it just causes a lot of tension and a lot of division, and it just kind of it makes people seem like
that their world's the only world.
It makes people very opinionated because they're not seeing anything else. They're only seeing one point of view.
It's so mad, man.
Yeah.
Also, one thing I did also want to mention, because I also did more research and I found another place called Seneca Village, fam. Like, I didn't even find it. Someone told me about it. Shout out to her, man. Low key. But yeah, so what Seneca Village is it was a area in New York. Okay, it's called post-slavery. A lot of black people were in New York. You see what I mean? Because I even heard that New York took 30 years to abolish slavery. So slowly by slowly, they let slaves go. So there was obviously still a lot of black people in the area. And one thing I heard, it was especially the Manhattan area. So obviously as more slaves are being freed, they're being let loose into that area. And so in lower Manhattan, it was a thing where that was a residential area. But obviously to the north of that was just bare hills. It was bare hills, and it was land that no one wanted to build on because it would be too expensive, it would be too complicated. But then there was one patch of land that was habitable. You see what I mean? So they started selling this land, and it took one black man to go buy some of that land. He only bought a bit of land. He bought what he could afford and told other black people who were obviously somewhat
affluent.
Yeah, somewhat affluent in... I would have never said that word. Shout out to you, man. Somewhat affluent in the area. Gee, this English guy here, fam. But yeah, there was somewhat affluent in the area to go and purchase some of that as well. So it became a thing where black people all moved up to this place, and it was called Seneca Village. And so they moved over the hills and everything. They got there, and now they started their own communities. So sort of similar to Black Wall Street. You see what I mean? And it's also a thing where in New York, you couldn't vote unless you were a homeowner. So now this gave them a chance to vote and everything. So this was big for them. And also, it even became a thing where the Germans and the Irish who were in New York, and obviously Irish people have history of going through racism in America as well, so then they also felt like outcasts. They came to Seneca Village and they inhabited as well. So it's a thing where this is now one of the first thriving interracial communities in America. And all was good until what happened is, obviously all the rich people in New York, and obviously this is now at a time where travel is becoming a thing, like overseas travel. They've now been to Europe. They see how nice parks are. They see how nice greenery can be. So then they must have brought those ideas back to New York, and they said, you know what, we need a park. Central Park.
Oh, really?
Yes. So they...
About to get dark.
Yeah. So then they must have planned out this big stretch in the middle of New York where they were going to cut everything down and build a park. You see what I mean? They'll funnel the water through there and they'll have a park there. But obviously, as part of that plan, Seneca Village was right there. So then they obviously evicted everyone. They said, you have about a month to leave. So leave. You see what I mean? And obviously this is now a thing where you can't sell the house. You see what I mean? You can't sell your business that you have there. You can't.
It's going to get
You see, who's going to buy that? You see what I mean? Who's going to buy a place that will be out in so and so days? I don't know. But even if they did, it would probably be barely anything. And it's also not, you know what? I doubt they did. Because one thing I did read was in the media and in the newspapers, obviously they needed to stop opposition. They needed to stop people from being opposed to these things. So then in the media, they must have been putting out, people down there are living in shacks. Like they're living in shanties there. They're living off the land. You see what I mean? Like they're just sucking off the land. You see what I mean? Like they're just there. They're just sitting there. You see what I mean? Basically, like they're just taking up space there. So then, obviously, there was now no one opposing to these ideas. So then that's how the plan got put through. So then obviously, I doubt they got compensation, you know. I definitely doubt it. So then obviously Seneca Village gone, all the people, where are they gonna go?
Yeah, and on that with the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, like a lot of these people had to go live in tent cities.
Yeah, Tulsa. Yeah.
Imagine you've got a private, you own a bank. You go from owning a bank to living in a tent for the rest of your life.
Do you know what the worst thing is about it though? It's not even like you came and took someone's land, yeah. The people living in Tulsa, they did their own thing.
Yeah.
and someone still found a way to come and infiltrate.
You see what I mean?
Man said they did colonialism straight in their own country.
It's madness, you know. It's actually madness. But yeah, so then obviously, one question I did want to pose to you, man, is now about gentrification. Because what you can see is that Central Park can somewhat be seen as gentrification because you're kicking people out to kind of raise the value of the area. So what do you, man, feel about gentrification? And do you, man, how do you weigh the benefits of gentrification, obviously with having a area with more worth? How do you weigh that to the negatives of obviously pushing people out?
Again, I'm gonna go back to the surface and the deeper answer. On the surface, you know, it's good because you're gonna have better jobs. You're gonna have people with more money coming into the area, spending more money. Areas that are quite poor are gonna become a bit richer, which is, in theory, better for everyone. But on a deeper level, these areas that are poor, usually you see are filled with people of colour and usually are filled with black people, and it's not by accident. And it's not as if these black people are going to be allowed to rise with the area. They're going to get kicked out so these richer people can come in, move to another poor area until the people in power see fit for that area to rise, and they'll be moved on again.
Yeah.
And you can't get progress from that.
It's so mad.
And it's not as if these people are poor through laziness or whatsoever. You know, it's centuries, decades of oppression.
Yeah. And even because black people will not get, it's obviously looking back to Tulsa and looking back to Seneca Village, these black people were not given the chance to build generational wealth, you know.
And they were trying.
Yeah.
And they weren't complaining.
You see what I mean?
You know, they weren't going to these rich white areas and trying to steal. They were trying. And they were trying to do it out of the way as well.
Yeah. So then obviously, so anyone that doesn't really understand gentrification, imagine there's this area, let's call it...
Brixton is a really good example.
You see, I don't know Brixton like that, but... So imagine there's this area, obviously, it's a poorer area, things like that. It's a poorer area, but then, let's say, I mean, there's different ways to do it, but let's say it can be sort of like a individual thing in which rich people will come and buy an area or like buy land or houses in that area, and they'll build something that's very expensive. It could be a house, or it could be, so let's say they build an expensive house or expensive housing estate in which the people of the area can't afford to live in. It's basically like that. And it's now a thing where, obviously with this nice thing being built in that area, and obviously let's say they build shops with it. If you're gonna build if you're gonna build a housing estate, you're gonna build nicer shops for the richer people who will be moving in. You see what I mean? The Rachel's, the M&S's.
The Audi's gone now.
Yeah, you see, the Audi's gone, fam. So all of that. And then now with these new things coming into the area over time, people who own the building that you're living in, obviously the building that you're renting in, they're gonna be like, if this is now the value of this land, I should start charging more. You see what I mean? Because this person is now living next to this area. Their area is now nice. They're no longer living in an area that's full of crime or whatever. So now it's a thing where they're gonna be charged rent that they just can't afford. You see what I mean? They literally just can't afford. So then, indirectly or directly, if you want to say it like that, they are being pushed out of their house.
Yeah.
And obviously, if this space is now free, the cycle can continue.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Where they can build even more richer areas. And there's a thing where because let's say they built a new housing estate, it's going to be bigger houses. So it's a thing where they're moving out more people to bring less people in. This increases homelessness. You see what I mean? This increases poverty. This increases, because these people who are now moving out of these poorer houses, they're going to probably have to go live with someone. And they're all going to bunch up in one house.
They're going to have to seek housing from the government. And the government, you can be in a housing estate in South London and they're going to say, all right, boom, we're going to send you to Manchester. Just imagine that, and that's your only option. You're leaving your family, your friends, and you've gone country now, and that's it. Like, that's what you've got to do.
It's so mad.
And I just want to emphasise the point with what we're saying, like, class issues, poverty, all these things come hand in hand with racism. You know, like capitalism, they go hand in hand. They're not mutually exclusive. I just wanted to emphasize that point.
It's true, fam.
You can see a lot of gentrification after effects in California, San Francisco. I think you could probably see it somewhere in LA. Could probably see it a lot somewhere in LA in certain parts. I'm not sure if it's downtown or uptown or where, but I've seen a particular video where there's just, if you go to LA, there's like a particular area where there's just a whole load of homeless people just everywhere, just chilling there.
New York as well.
You can see it in a lot of areas which are doing quite well now, which would like probably 10, even 5 years ago, 15 years ago been
poor areas.
Yeah.
See, it's mad because one example I'm even thinking of. Obviously, I haven't looked into the history of Brazil, but I'm thinking of Rio, fam.
No.
You see what I mean? Because how there are rich areas, and right next to them, there's all these poor favelas.
The injustices in Brazil are mad.
If people haven't seen favelas, they're just literally houses on top of each other.
Yeah,
like it's on. There's a hill, and it's just houses all on top of each other.
It's so crazy, man. So obviously, looking into things like gentrification, these are things that have been. Obviously, see, I'm not going to make it into a racial thing because there are now black gentrifiers. I can't lie, I've seen one on Twitter. There are now black gentrifiers. Obviously, the one on Twitter, shout out to Dammy. Dammy actually sent me this one. It was, this black family went to go buy a house in the hood, and they bought it for about 20k, but then they did it up, they made it all nice. Like, the place looked beautiful. But in the end, they sold it for 250k. So now it's a thing where, okay, so did you do that for the hood? You see what I mean? Like you say, because the tweet even said, who said you can't invest in the hood? Are you investing in the hood?
It's kind of counterintuitive when you think about it.
And I think on that, there's quite a devious and insidious thing that some black people do, where they try and play to the hood aspect of the black community when they themselves, they know they're like middle class.
Yeah, they're not even hood.
In order, they kind of use their blackness to try pander to the lower class black people in order to get things done that only benefit them. Do you know what I'm saying?
But yeah, man. But obviously, the history of gentrification is obviously white versus black. That's the history of gentrification. And I want to actually bring this to you guys. It's a quote from MLK, and obviously, he must have been talking to one of his friends. His name was Harry Belafonte, and this was in the middle of the struggle for civil rights and stuff like that. So now it's a thing where, okay, I'm gonna read the quote. So he's now speaking to Harry Belafonte, and he must have gone to Harry's house. This is actually, Harry even said this was the last time that he saw MLK before he died. So, as in the last time he saw him at his house before he died, and he could see that MLK was in distress. Like he was thinking, like he had a lot of it on his mind, and Harry asked him, "What's wrong?" And then MLK said the following quote. He said, "I am deeply troubled. We have fought hard and long for integration, as I believe we should have, and I know that we will win. But I've come to believe that we're integrating into a burning house. I am afraid that America may be losing what moral vision she may have had, and I'm afraid that even as we integrate, we are walking into a place that does not understand that this nation needs to be deeply concerned with the plight of the poor and disenfranchised. Until we commit ourselves to ensuring that the underclass is given justice and opportunity, we will continue to perpetuate the anger and the violence that tears at the soul of this nation." He said this 60 years ago, fam. We're seeing the effects of that quote today, fam. So one question I do want to ask you guys is, was integrating a good thing? Should we have integrated, and should we have been fighting for integration when people like Malcolm X were screaming, "Let's go back to Africa"? You see what I mean? Malcolm X was very, very vocal about it. Should we have even tried to build here? Or should we have continued to keep making places like Tulsa?
That's a crazy question, and I know that's a crazy question because I'm almost speechless with the question.
Fam, I told you I had a twist today, fam.
I don't know, I feel like I'm personally, from a selfish perspective, I'm biased because I was raised here. You know what I mean? I'm Caribbean. I've been back to Barbados a few times, but not enough for me to be like, yeah, I would set down shop there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I'm here because of colonialism. Therefore, I should have the right to build something here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're not letting us build properly here. Slowly over decades, we get a little bit more. We get a couple more crumbs, but it's not fair. You know, if we all went back home and we all built back home, then yeah, in a perfect world, that would be the way. But once you've allowed these people that you brought here to now set down roots in America, in the UK,
they don't know Africa.
That's what I'm saying. That, like, how can I say, you know, how can I truly say that's back home for me?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm black. Yes, at the end of the day, my roots are in Africa. I am an African man, really. But at the same time, in my heart, how can I say?
You see what I mean?
So it's hard.
It's true. Because I was listening to another podcast and Justin Blue was on it, and he was discussing, should we have just asked to be left alone? Because obviously Tulsa was in 1920, but then Malcolm X is now discussing this civil rights movement, which was in the 1960s. You see what I mean? 40 years has passed, and obviously we'd progressed a long way in that 40 years. Should we have tried again? Because there were still black communities, and they were beginning to thrive. You know, after Tulsa, like that. Tulsa wasn't the end of black communities. Like, there was genuinely a lot of them. It's just that we've only had the chance to discuss 2 today. But we need to realize in these black communities, because obviously these black communities were self-sufficient again. So they now have teachers, engineers, architects. They have everything that they need there. But it's now, when integration becomes a thing and you can now work anywhere, are you going to stay in the black community? Like, let's say you're one of the best teachers in the black schools. Are you going to stay in the black community? Because white people can pay you more. You see what I mean? These good universities can pay you a lot more than these places, than these black communities will. And obviously, and obviously in a place with so much poverty, there's obviously a lot of crime. You're now debating, I'm rich enough to move out of this place. You know, I'm rich enough to not have to worry about my car getting robbed or whatever, my house getting robbed when I'm not there. Does your black pride and your willingness to be in an area with a lot of black people, does that overpower your thoughts of how much money you could be earning somewhere else and how peaceful of a life you could be having somewhere else?
And I think the effects of that are exaggerated more here because, you know, you get like rappers and stuff that they'll make it, and at the end of it, like, really, when they don't kind of help out with their own community, we don't blame them that much because we're like, we don't blame you.
Yeah.
Like, you grew up like in the hood or whatever, you didn't, like, it was tough. You can now make it out. You can take your mum. Like, we don't blame you. Whereas, you know, I know a lot of, my dad tells me there's a lot of like reggae artists in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, for example, Chronics, who like, they stay in them places where they grew up and they build schools and they mentor children, and they're still some of the biggest reggae artists in the world. So, but I feel like it's because they're out there, like in the Caribbean, for example, where they're around the black people so much and they don't see as much, you know, like you said, the white people that can pay you more. Maybe it's a little easier. Maybe I don't know, but
yeah, because even when you look into these rappers or people who have made it in general, like people who have made it, you see that, because obviously we can even look at it in sports. Yeah, so let's say this NBA draft prospect, he's now living in the hood. I'll even take LeBron. Let me even say just LeBron. Obviously, I'm not gonna get onto LeBron. LeBron's an amazing man, genuinely, but he's now living in the hood. The hood is now protected him because obviously when you're NBA bound, they protect you. You see what I mean?
Have you had the DeMar DeRozan story?
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan was gonna get. He's from Compton, right? I think he's gonna get robbed. Him and his dad, and they pulled a gun, and then one of the robbers was like, "Nah, that's DeMar. Like, he's going to the NBA."
That's so crazy. You see what I mean? So this place has protected you. Like, you were their savior. They look to you as their savior, and it's a thing where these people, when they do get to the NBA and they do get paid, they leave and go live somewhere else. I'm not saying that they don't give money back to their community. That's not what I said. But I'm saying that they do go live somewhere else. So even us today, we aspire to live in these better neighborhoods. So you couldn't have expected someone back then to not want to. So and it became a thing where the black communities, they lost all their talent. All their engineers, all their top architects, everyone, they left. Because they didn't have to stay and put up with it. And that leaves the ghettos. Like that's how ghettos were created. It was now a thing where all the upper class black people had left, just leaving the lower class people to try and survive for themselves. You see what I mean? Like we still see those areas today. It's crazy when you think about it, man.
You know what it is? If they were leaving to come back, it's different. But the thing is, when they leave and they taste that new life, they never look back.
Yeah, they have their kids in the new areas and they keep them there.
I can't even say that. I don't know what I would do. I can't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
You see what I mean?
That's
Yeah.
why I'm not judging.
Yeah, you see.
I would like to think that I would go and come back. I would definitely help, but you know, in terms of like what I see some of the best do, like going back and setting up like their roots in these areas, I don't know if I would do that, and that kind of scares me.
You see what I mean? But yeah, man. Because even me, on a personal level, I ain't staying in Luton, man. You see what I mean? You work so hard so you don't have to stay in Luton, fam. And there's not even anything inherently wrong with Luton, to be honest.
It's just Luton.
I've not come into real trouble in Luton. But yeah, man. That's me.
That's us.
That's us. But yeah, wait, you got anything?
No, I was just gonna say it's like, yeah, personally, I don't think I would either. I think if I leave Luton, I don't see why I'd come back.
You see what I mean?
Because I'm a selfless person, but I still don't think I don't see why I'd come back.
Yeah.
I don't see the incentive.
Yeah.
I would have to be shown the incentive.
Yeah.
But it's hard for you when it's hard for a ghetto to show you something.
Yeah.
And
especially when you don't want to see it.
And like if you're staying, you're taking less pay, fam.
Yeah.
That you're doing that.
That's a big
Yeah.
pay cut.
Like both my parents, we live in Luton, but they work in London. They
Is
trek,
it?
They trek.
Yeah, look, man. But yeah, I mean, that's it for me. This episode, if it's not for you.
Yeah, man. I think we got all we needed and more.
Solid stone. Alright, so guys, hopefully you took something from that episode.
If you didn't listen again.
Honestly, because how could you not take anything, you
this
know?
time share it to your friend and then listen with them.
Bro, I have a listen party, fam. Have a whole listen.
Ooh.
Yeah, have a whole listening. We should do that, you know.
Oh, I like that.
That would slap, fam. After this Corona thing, just have a. I mean, gee, that means we don't get the numbers, innit, though? Because if everyone's there together.
Nah. Just listen with your friend. Listen with your friend and text each other.
Exactly, you see what I mean? Remote. Everyone, social distancing, man. You know what I'm saying?
Mask and everything.
But yeah, man. I mean, that's us for today. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you later.